Okay, we are going to review cutting edge research from Sir John Pendry, a research group that's been corroborated. They demonstrated a temporal double slit experiment. So instead of using a spatial slit for creating entanglement, they used a slit in time by using a negative refractive metamaterial, and they're calling this a new phase of matter, and it's a complete corroboration of what I've been claiming. The basic message of Sir John Pendry is that a negative frequency is not negative energy. So that's the exact secret of alchemy from this asymmetric time shift. So let's get into the details. It's pretty complicated. I just spent last night and tonight digging into the research because they published it, I don't know, like a year ago, and then there's already been like 25 studies corroborating, and it's all funded by the military, a lot of it. So Sir John Pendry, the double time slits experiment, opens the door to a whole new spectroscopy capable of resolving the temporal structure of a light pulse on the scale of one period of the radiation. So you have this paradox between the speed of light, the amplitude of light from the frequency intensity, and using that amplitude as a digital signal. So what they're trying to do is, using a negative refractive index, reduce the frequency and time of this light signal to one cycle of light, which is in the femtoseconds of 4.4 femtoseconds from a near red infrared region of laser. So here you have this, you have an inherent time frequency uncertainty when you're converting the time as the frequency as an angular wave into a time intensity of amplitude signal. And so then you have to square that to get probability because the uncertainty, that's your typical quantum physics. So based on that, the shorter you can get the time pulse, then the more you get a broader frequency resonance. And then that's if you can get a time with the negative refractive index, you're getting a complex wave with a negative frequency that's shorter than the time pulse of the signal sent in. And since it's a shorter time, you're able to get a amplification of the energy from the negative frequency, and you're able to do it with a resolution that's smaller than the uncertainty principle of the time and frequency. So this is corroboration of what Basil J. Hiley has been saying. They just, Sir John Pendry just calls it asymmetric time frequency when in fact it's noncommutative, and he even gets into the mathematics. I'll be showing that. That's the same as what they're calling it weak measurement as well, which is what Basil J. Hiley was focused on. So in terms of alchemy, you have this connection between the creation of new matter from this negative frequency that increases the energy of the light. So you have a rise decay asymmetry of the time slit, and so you get a Doppler shift. And so this is a relativistic quantum phenomenon. It's not just quantum. So yeah, it's kind of complicated. I'm actually going to make the screen smaller because it's like too big for me to read it. Here we go. Let's see. So this is the amplitude. So you have to square it, the difference between the two frequencies. But because you're able to have that sub wavelength of light of the pulse, then you're able to just manipulate the time instead of the wavelength. You're able to manipulate the cycle of the light in contrast to the wavelength. So they synchronize a pulse that goes in with a laser light going through it, and then so you get a refraction, and then by getting that refraction, you're getting a superposition as a qubit, and so this was published. Let's see. It was first published 2023. So there's already been like 25. I don't know. There's been a lot of research following up on this already. So, by being able to manipulate a single cycle light, like I said, they're able to convert it to a digital signal. So this would like vastly increase the computer processing time. But on the other hand, they're also able to get a light amplification that violates the conservation of energy. And like I said, they just call it asymmetry of the time. Now, this is what the quantum biology argument has been, that the difference between the microtubules and the tubulin are also this same negative refractive index. That's a metamaterial. So, of course, they're relying on a visual measurement of time and frequency, whereas if you're listening, it's an internal process. So that's the whole point there, is that in quantum biology, you're relying on superluminal phonons. But you can do that directly just by listening, and that's when you get into the non-dualism. So you get time diffraction while maintaining the space as momentum. Okay, so we're going to get into some images pretty soon here, because, I wanted to post images so it's easier to understand. So they're saying, since it's entangled, this is essentially what the Hawking radiation also does. So this would be what's going on before the Big Bang and after the acceleration of the universe. The lack of energy conservation implies that the scattered wave may be more energetic than the incident one. It can lead to tremendous amplification. So this is how alchemy works through meditation. So it's nice to finally get some corroboration in the lab that's repeatable. So here you get the femtocycle of the spectrum of visible light. So normally the amplitude is too weak when you're relying on just a normal resonance with the photon pump. So that's why they have to use this negative refractive metamaterial. And like I said, it's been replicated by other labs. So sorry, I'm not referencing all the different papers that were cited. I have the links in this. I'll post a link to my blog post. So essentially, you're getting this. This is your time crystal. This also enables the creation of the time crystal, which, as I posted recently, that would be the inherent noncommutativity is what explains this eternal times. In other words, you're getting a higher energy than you're pumping in. So as long as you have that resonance of time as an external source, the resonance will keep self amplifying. And so you have this difference between the real and the imaginary, and that's why it's non-commutative. So let's just keep going here. That's the first. Okay, so this is again the difference between the real and the imaginary, and so you get this zero phase shift for the wavelength. So you're maintaining the wavelength as the pulse, but then you get this negative refractive index. Yeah, I don't, it's like in terms of music theory, it's a lot simpler as far as the explanation. That's why I don't. But here, there again, they have the difference between like the wavelength versus the frequency and time. So this is the space, and this is the photonic time crystal. So this is what we're focusing on. So essentially, it's a 4 pi difference between these two, and that's why it's non-commutative. And that they just call it asymmetric. So you have they are stating, very clearly it's a harmonic distribution between the fundamental tone and the first harmonic or overtone, if you want to call it that. So here, this would be like the signal as an amplitude, as a phase, that you have to have a symmetric phase, but then you have the time and the frequency inside it that's like half of the signal, you see? It's like asymmetric to it. So this shows the asymmetric shift in the amplitude, shifting over. The frequencies are all harmonics that share the same imaginary part. So you have a negative frequency, and they interact weakly. So again, this is what Basil J. Halley was focused on. Okay, so here again you have like this is the pulse, but then this is the metamaterial. So it's a sub-wavelength to the wavelength of the pulse, the time. And so that's why you're able to get this amplification of the energy, because the smaller the time, the bigger the frequency. And the intensity of light is based on frequency. So yeah, I did email Professor Gunter Nimps because this is the same exact secret that his superluminal acoustic signal was based on. So you have the difference between the group velocity, which again would be from the amplitude as a signal, and then you have the center, which is based on the center of the wave packet, but then you have the phase as the inverse of the time and the frequency. That's the actual signal as the edge of the group velocity, so it's the phase signal. So Guterres was focused on the signal as communication, but this is actually a light amplification, so it's violating the conservation of energy. And again, this is what alchemy is based on, so you can store up this energy inside your body. So here again we have this would be the signal, but then you have a smaller frequency, like it diffracts into a sub-algebra. Basil J. Halley called it sub-algebra, but in this case it's physics as a sub-wavelength or sub-frequency. Okay. So here again is the amplitude gain. And this shows why it's non-commutative. You can see this is exactly what I've been showing with the music theory. So the fission of so you have the signal in the pump, and then it goes into the metamaterial, negative refractive index, and so then you get this fission where it splits and you get an amplification resonance. So essentially you're doing this with your mind by turning the light around and listening to the source of light without having any physicals. You're just doing direct time frequency resonance when you do meditation. Access to negative frequencies creates this photon pair. So you have to create the superluminal. In non-commutativity, the entanglement is already assumed as non-locality. Therefore, although negative frequencies do not here imply negative energies. And this is what the Hawking radiation is, the secret of it. So you have here, it's superluminal, proof right there, it's space-time cone. It's asymmetric. And then they're using ultrasound just like in meditation.